Hey, you. It's a blind life. Everyone, and welcome to the It's a Blind Life podcast. My name is Aria.
And I'm Belle.
And we are two legally blind sisters who created this show because we just kind of wanted to talk about our lives, how we do things, giving advice for people who might be going through the same kind of thing, all that jazz. We just talk about whatever we want to talk about. There is no rhyme or reason to the topics. We just kind of pick a topic that we find interesting and we talk about it. So that leads us to today. Today, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about different apps that help us to complete certain tasks or, anything like that help us kind of quote unquote, do normal things, so to say. So I think both Belle and I have different apps for this. Am I correct?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, first thing, preface, before we get into any of this, Belle and I are probably some of the worst blind people you will ever meet.
Truth.
Because we are very stubborn. We do use some assistive technology, but not probably nearly as much as we should. We found ways to kind of get around, using assistive technology. We have kind of our own way of doing things, and it gets to a point that assistive technology really doesn't do all that much. So there are rare occasions, though, when assistive technology is really quite useful. And so, especially nowadays with smartphones and, all the apps and all of the different things, there's a lot of useful apps out there for people with visual impairments. And I have certain ones that I use. Belle has certain ones that she uses. And honestly, it's quite helpful to just have, certain aids, just in your phone, because it's just, that goes with you everywhere. You're able to pull it up, that kind of thing. So, do you want to go ahead and talk about yours first?
I mean, the only two that I really use, and there's only one that I use pretty constantly, and I use the camera app. Mm-hmm. That comes on your phone, iPad, whatever. Mm-hmm. I use that the most because then I can take a picture of a board, zoom in, and all that. And then the other one that I use, but that's rarer for me to use, is a color tester.
Yes.
Thingy. I believe that's the one app that we both use. That's the same exact thing.
Yes.
To tell colors of things, but other than that, that's really all I use. I do have some other apps, I have this Be My Eyes app where people who can see can get on, and then a blind person can use it and make a FaceTime call, mm-hmm. and the sighted person then helps the visually impaired. I have that. I have not used it because I'm an anxious mess. So I haven't used it.
Yeah. So you use the camera app to take pictures of stuff, to zoom in, to see what's going on. You use the color tester to tell you what color things are. And that's pretty much what you use regularly.
Yes, that is literally the only things I use.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So that makes sense. And I get that. Mine, like Belle said, I do have a color tester as well that you just kind of hold your phone onto, show it a certain item of clothing or something that you're curious of the color for. And it will give you kind of a brief approximation of what that color is. Normally it's enough for us to get the general gist of, the color of the clothing or that kind of thing. Another one that I use very regularly is my magnifier. So I have an actual magnifier app that I downloaded onto my phone. And I absolutely love it because, whenever I'm kind of like, I can't really see that thing, I just kind of pull out my phone, turn on the app, and, shine it on there. And then I can read whatever it is, that's on there. I use it a lot of times when I'm doing like crafting. If I'm doing like crafting and it's really, really small, I'll use the magnifier, especially when I was working to read medication bottles because I used to be a vet tech. So filling medications is part of the job. I would use the magnifier a lot to read the labels and to read the bottles of medication if it wasn't very clearly listed, to double check like my vaccines, a bunch of different things. Like there was a lot of wide uses for the magnifier app and I absolutely adore it. It works out really, really well. And especially now, like if we're at home and I like go to my mom and I'm like, hey, can you see this thing? And she's like, no, I can't see it either. Then I'm like, fine. And I pull out my phone and I get the magnifier and then, go from there. So that one's really nice. Another one, I also use the camera app, but I don't use it the way Belle uses it. I kind of use it as a binocular in a way.
Well, I use it as binocular / magnifier. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like normally if we're going out to eat and like we're going to some place, kind of like a more fast food place, if I don't know what I normally order, like if it's a place I don't normally go a lot, I'll use the camera app to like zoom in on the board just to see what it says. And so that way I don't have to like bother, whoever I'm with and just be like, what's going on? What is on the board? So I do that a lot. I'll do that a lot unless it's a place where it's like pretty easy to like be like, oh, okay, I will have this thing. Like, that it's pretty obvious. Another big one that it's not really blind person only, essentially, or like something that people with visual impairments would think like would be like, oh, definitely this. But I count it as kind of that adjacent, are kind of like things like Uber, DoorDash, and Instacart, because, not being able to drive, not being able to, go from point A to point B, all three of those things are really, really good at getting the things that we need or getting us where we need to go. I know like Belle and I have Ubered when we've had to go pick up some things, for Belle, and our roommate Beth wasn't around. So like, we were able to go and get the things that we needed to when we needed to get them. DoorDash, I mean, I don't cook. And Belle gets very busy sometimes. So it's a way for me to be able to kind of get us all food when we need it and nobody feels like cooking. And Instacart, we haven't used it a lot, but the one time that I have used it, it was very useful of getting kind of the little things that you need every so often, which is nice. And I know that, again, they're not blind person specific, but it is something that I don't feel like a lot of people think about, but it is very, very useful for people, with blind and visual impairments to have these kind of apps where people can, either get you from point A to point B or can like bring things to you if you order them, that kind of thing. It's definitely very nice to have. I'm trying to think what else. What am I missing?
I don't know.
You're very helpful.
Listen, man, I use literally the least I can in daily life.
You really do. There are definitely times where I'm like, I feel like I am worse than you.
No.
And there are other times where I'm like, Belle is way worse than me.
No, I do not. Growing up, you were worse than I was. But now as an adult, I'm way worse. I do nothing.
This is true. I mean, I'm surprised you even have the Be My Eyes app. Like, even though you don't use it.
Yeah, it's downloaded on my iPad. Never used it once.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised and shocked.
Yeah, that I have
that
it
you
downloaded, but
actually use it.
never used it.
Yeah, color me shocked.
I know, right? At least I have something.
You have it, but
Doesn't mean I'm gonna use it. What about computer? What do you use on the computer?
what do I use on the computer? So when it comes to computers, that's a little bit different because I know that like growing up, like, well, for me especially, like getting a little laptop that I could take with me from, class to class that had everything that I needed on it. Like that was a big thing. That was like, everybody was like, all the doors in the world will open to you now that you have this computer. And I liked my computer. I liked using my computer. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think it was quite as groundbreaking as they thought it was. I know that computer-wise, though, what was nice is that for a long time, I had a screen magnifier application that is called Zoom Text. And we'll talk about, some of those different programs later on. But, just for the sake of this episode, we'll talk more about Zoom Text. And essentially, the nice thing about that was that it was a screen magnifier application. So you could, set the zoom level at really anything that you wanted. You could change the cursor size. You could have the computer show, make sure that it highlights where, when you're typing a document, the little, what is that called? The little straight up and down line that shows you where you're typing. It would essentially give it some more presence so that way you didn't lose it. I know I had a little thing that was an arrow on the top and the bottom. And any time that I stopped typing, those arrows would show up and say, hey, this is where you are in this document. So that was really, really nice for a long time, especially when I was in school. That was lovely to have. That was the main thing that I used on the computer. Oh, and the other thing that it would do was it would invert. You could set it to certain color schemes, and I would set mine to invert the brightness. So everything that was white would turn black, and everything that was black would turn white, and it would kind of be that weird. When you see images that it's this is the reverse negative or something like that, from a camera or something. All the pictures that were posted everywhere would look like that, which it especially, I don't know, when I was little, I remember looking up a picture of a panda and having the panda head that's normally white be black, and the black markings around the eyes be white, and around the ears be white, and being this looks so strange. It was something that was very strange and also very amusing to me. I don't know why, but it was. And so I would use that a lot back in the day. Nowadays, I don't have the most up-to-date version of Zoom Text. I don't even have Zoom Text on my computer anymore, honestly, because computers are definitely getting better with their own accessibility. I essentially can have my own little version of Zoom Text just through using the actual computer's magnifier. So that's what I do. On my computer that I use now, I don't have the colors flipped. I'll just kind of bump up the magnification for the screen a couple times. And given that really I just use that computer for editing the podcasts, posting to the YouTube channel, all of that stuff, it makes sense to me that I'm not using an inverse, flipping the colors. But that's just me. I'm not doing as much typing or anything as I used to. if I ever decide to like go back to school or something, I'm definitely going to like find a way to reverse the brightness just so that way it's easier to read. But yeah, that's pretty much what I use. What about you for the computer?
Anything that I can have set to dark mode, it's set to dark mode.
Fair. That's a general rule of thumb, but that's more for like phone and iPad kind of deal.
Yeah, I have it on my computer with Word, and because Word's the main thing I use. So I have it set for Word. I think PowerPoint too. Word and PowerPoint is what I tend to be forced to use the most. And then PowerPoint, Word, and then in settings, like your normal computer settings, I have it set to where my cursor's like a different color. I think mine's like a reddish. I think it's a darker color. I forget exactly what I set it to, but it's a darker color, but not too dark, so I can see it against my dark computer screen background, and I do increase the size of it. I also have the cursor identifiers, the bar, the text bar. It's thicker, and then it does have two
the arrows.
They're not arrows, they're more like bubbles.
But still,
they're
it's some
bubble
sort
arrows, but there's some sort of indicator to tell me where my text is going to go.
Yeah.
But honestly, that's all I use. Zoom text has been pushed on me, and it was on my old laptop for college, and I never used it. I hated using Zoom text. But another thing that's different to me compared to Aria is I need to have a touchscreen laptop so I can zoom in on things.
Yeah, computers are definitely different than... I mean, of course, technology changes and everything, but even like back when I was using them to now, I feel like there's a whole lot more than like what we know. Like, I feel like even with you've been out of it for too long, so you don't really know what all's there, like what all options are there. For me, I've definitely been out of it for way too long. So I just kind of like look around and try to find things that I'm like, oh, yeah, this would actually be really, really useful, you know? So I pick that thing.
I think for me, it's not so much I've been out of the game. It's more so I don't care. If I can find the easy way, less expensive, just all around easier way to do things, I'm gonna do it. It's like, yes, is my computer bigger? Yes. However, I just have that to, you know, do whatever I need to do. So it's not that big of a deal, so to speak. I don't know. I'm
stubborn.
Yeah, I'm stubborn. If I can go the shortest way to do... If I can find the quickest way to skin a cat, I'm going to do it.
I feel like we need a better metaphor for that. The quickest way to complete a task.
There's multiple ways to skin a cat. It's the saying.
I know it is. But anyway, yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like this episode's going to be really short. And really and truly and honestly, it is because we are such terrible blind people.
Well, we're terrible blind people on both of our parts. In terms of this episode, it's more so you're the terrible blind person. For me, I prefer old school methods to do things. I am not a technological person. Only reason I have technology is because the world is technological. So, like, I need it for school, work, whatever. But, like, if I could go back to pen and paper, man, I'd go back to pen and paper.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of funny how I'm pulling up, you know, a bunch of different apps or pointing out a bunch of different apps that are useful to us. And you're like, you are still the worst blind person here.
Who, me?
Yes.
Oh, no, I'll always be the worst blind person. Like, I've warned that to everybody that I meet. I'm the worst blind person you'll ever meet, especially like disabilities at school and stuff. I'm going to tell you this now. I'm the worst blind person you'll ever meet because I do the bare minimum to help myself. And like, I'm not saying that that's what everybody does because everybody's different.
Yeah, there are definitely people who really, truly, and honestly need the tech.
Yeah,
and
who need things more.
And need the things. So, like, for us, I feel like, too, it's kind of like we don't really need this. So let's not do this and let's, make more resources for the people who actually, truly need this.
I think it's that, and I think it's also for the both of us, we've done things. Technology, since both of us have been born, has drastically improved, especially in the field of assisted technology. So when it comes to both of us, and the fact that we were born with our condition, once we learn one way to do something, it's easier for us to continue doing it that way, even though there would be technically an easier way for us to do it. That's more difficult than for us than the old way that we've done for years.
It has to be, like, for me, it has to be, like, the most mind-altering, like, oh my goodness, this would change everything for me thing. For me to be like, okay, I will use this. And most of the time, it's not that. Like, not trying to be, like, down or anything on it, but, like, there is really only so much at this point that technology can do.
Yeah.
And so, like,
get back to me when I can teleport. Like, if you're going to save me, like, 2 hours out of my day or something, fine. But if it's going to save me, like, 5 minutes at the end of the day, I'm like, that's more of a headache to try to figure out how to
it's
work
one
it
of those,
for 5 minutes.
Yeah, like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, that could work. That could work really well for me. This would be something that is very, very useful. But it doesn't mean at the end of the day it's, like, going to be worthwhile.
Well, not only is it's also a thing of our father is also very guilty of doing this. He is very guilty of pushing things for us and being like, oh, this could help you. And we'll look at it in the grand scheme of things and be like, yeah, that could actually help. That could, really work for us. And then, like, we tried in practice and it just makes everything 10 times worse. But our father doesn't see it that way.
Yeah, because, I mean, the thing is, too, and we'll talk about this more later, but it's kind of like an adjacent point. When you have, like, 12 different magnifiers and 5 different binoculars and 3 different canes and, like, all of these things that it's like, oh, this is for this situation and this is for this. Like, it gets to the point where it gets to be too much. And it's just kind of like, I get it, but also this is not useful to me. This is not, like, the amount of stuff that I have to carry compared to its usefulness is like, they cancel each other out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I will figure it out. And, like, that's why, like, I love my magnifier app on my phone. I don't have to carry around an extra magnifier. I don't have people looking at me necessarily weird when I pull out a freaking magnifier to use. It's just me using my phone. People might think I'm weird using my phone, but at that point, it doesn't matter. You don't necessarily know what I'm doing with my phone. Yeah. Whereas, like, if I pull out a magnifying glass, everybody's like, oh dear. Like, I don't know. It's definitely that kind of vibe a lot of times. And sometimes it's like, I have to do this so I don't care. But other times it's like, I don't want to deal.
Yeah, there are a lot of times when we're in public where it's just like, I don't want to deal with it. Like, it's why I don't use a cane to walk to school. It's like, I don't want to deal with everything. Everybody already feels bad because of how big my backpack is. Like, I don't want more drama and trouble than anything's worth. Like, I can easily get myself the 15-minute walk.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I don't know.
And it's not me saying that help isn't appreciated, because I'm not saying that at all. I'm more so going off of, I've lived this way for so long. I've managed this way for so long. I know this way. And then to have other people try to, come in and be like, oh, but do this. Like, this is better. Like, blah, blah, blah. No, don't do that. Like, don't try to think you're making my life easier when, like, in the future, if I did those changes, would it be better? Like, would it may have been better? Yes. However, in the short term of trying to implement that stuff, it is more struggle, more of a headache. It's just worse.
And the thing is, too, is that, like, making a habit for, like, those kind of things is already difficult. It's already a struggle. So, like, to just keep adding more and more and more on top of it, a lot of times it's just, I'm just going to do things the way I want to do them.
Yeah, honestly.
And regardless of if it's a good way or not, that's irrelevant. It is my way. I need to do things my way to get through life my way, and that's how it's going to be.
That, and another thing of what works for us now doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to work for us in the future. Like, in middle school, I had this wonderful piece of technology. I loved it. It pretty much did what my phone does now, but I had like a rolling desk, and it brought like the board whenever I showed a camera to the board, it brought it on a laptop screen. Lovely, loved that thing. And then when I started high school, I had to carry that. Like, I didn't have a rolling table anymore because my high school was 2 floors, so I had to carry the equipment, I had to carry the laptop, I had to carry my school stuff. Like, it wasn't worth it, and it took so much time to set up. Like, I'd be 15 minutes into class, I'd have 25 minutes to actually sit there and be able to learn before I had to take it down and get ready to go to my next class. Like, it wasn't worth it. So, like, I stopped using it, and everybody started to throw a fit. And I'm just like, no, it's not worth it. You can't make me use this when it's not conducive to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And, like, luckily, everybody then let me, like, either get up to look at the board or take a picture of the board. Like, we worked through it, but...
Yeah, it can be a lot sometimes. Going through the different things, it can be a whole lot that it kind of gets to be a little bit more than you bargained for, in a way. And, like, sometimes, like you really have to just do what works for you, and you'll find what works for you. I don't remember when I got my magnifier app, but, like, because it's become so ingrained in what I do and in my life, if for me, I'm like, I cannot imagine living without that thing. But for other people, it's going to be that magnifier. For other people, it is going to be, the certain apps that have the screen talk to you, like, and read to you what's on the screen. There's a lot of different things, and we very much are just scratching the surface of what we know, because a lot of the things are definitely for people that have a lot less vision than we do. So, we even still have room to learn more.
Yes, definitely.
So, yeah, I think that's where we're going to leave this episode, though, because...
we're running out of things to talk about.
We're running out of
moral
options.
of the story, we use bare minimum. We are horrible blind people.
We are horrible blind people. And one day maybe we'll find other things that work, and, that we'll tell you when that happens, because, we'll just be like, hey, I found this thing. This is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
But again, that's rare. So that being said, we want to thank you guys today for coming along as we talked about the apps that we use, some of the tech that we use, not everything, of course, but just, little bits and pieces. Of course, if you like this episode, if you like what you've been listening to, please follow the podcast and share the episode with your friends. It really would help us to grow the show, and we would appreciate that support Very, very much. So, what are we going to be talking about next time?
I think there's a bird outside my room. On an unrelated note,
Okay.
not too happy. Anyway, why we dislike electric cars.
Ah, yes. Why we dislike electric cars. I knew something somewhat controversial is going to be coming up soon.
That's going to be a fun episode, and I'm going to get heated.
Yeah, so just be prepared. We will explain everything, I promise. So, that being said, we'll see you guys next time. Bye!